Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Marc Medley Show. And I am so appreciative of your listening, however many listeners there are, whether it's 1 or 1 million or 100,000 or 10. Whoever you are and who are listening, I am so appreciative and thankful for you. And as always, it is an absolute pleasure to share with you. Even though this is not necessarily the definition of a dialogue, because I don't get an opportunity to have you talk back to me, but just the fact that you listen makes me more appreciative than you can possibly know. As I open the show and I listen to the music, I just get into the mood for sharing my message. As the title of the theme song is What Could Have Been. And that's an original that was written by me. It's on my first CD, Go Up on the Third Limb. But the title is somewhat connected to what my thoughts are for today, which the title is Our Good Old Days Are Right Now. And I know some of you may be listening to that saying, well, Mark, what do you mean by that our good old days are right now? And I'll tell you exactly what I mean by that. Have you ever been in a conversation and you've been reminiscing and reflecting and talking with someone about something that occurred 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, or for that matter, might even have been a year ago, but most of the time it's a longer time period than that. There are things that were going on in your life at a particular time, and you didn't even realize at that time when you were going through those events or those activities that those would one day now become what you would refer to as the good old days. And time goes by so quickly. I can remember whenever I was in my 20s and we would travel to a friend's house on every holiday, whether it was Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, 4th of July, Labor Day, Memorial Day, whatever any of the major holidays were, there would be a celebration at someone's home. Our children were small at that time. Our parents were alive and could attend. They would be big kiboshes, if you will. They would be big events held at one of our friends' house. Matter of fact, it got to the point where we did the celebration so much that it was, you almost, when a holiday came around, you almost wanted to stay home. You almost like, oh, this has become very routine. We almost knew what to expect, who was going to be there, who was going to bring what dish, which child was going to do what. So it almost became mundane. We almost got to the point where you took it for granted. But then as the years passed, the parties started to lessen. People started to die and move away. Children grew older. As friends, lives got busier and we really didn't have the time now as much to have big parties at our houses on each holiday. And as 5, 10, 15 years went by and we get together and we talk, we think back to those were the good old days. And we didn't realize at that time when we were doing what we were doing, that at that point it was the good old days. We were just doing what we were doing. We were just having fun. We were just enjoying each other. Not realizing that one day, that routine, that mundane activity that we began to take for granted would no longer be in place. We would no longer do those. Or if we did, it would be far and few in between. And each time there would be less people there, as I said, given to death or relocation. So I say all that to say that the activities and things that you're doing today, right here in 2017, in 2027 is going to seem like the good old days. In 2035 is going to seem like the good old days. Maybe even in 2025, what you're doing in 2017 is going to feel like the good old days. The same thing occurs with music or films or commercials. As you look back and reflect on shows that you watched years ago and you get a chance to take a look at them again now, you get a whole different perspective on the show than whenever you watched it originally. Same thing with some of the old commercials, television commercials. If you go back on YouTube and look some of them up and look at them, you realize just how funny they were. You realize just how sarcastic they were. You realize how there was a message in the sarcasm or in the irony or in the satire. You listen to music that you took for granted. You knew it was good songs at that point, but you didn't realize just how good it was until you compared it to the music that came years later. I doubt very seriously, and I could be wrong, if in 2047 we're going to be reflecting and listening back to the music that we hear now in 2017 the same way we do in music from the 40s and the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe we will. And maybe at that point in 2047, people will be saying 2017 was the good old days in terms of music. I don't know, because in my humble opinion, it just doesn't appear that the quality is of the same nature of the music that was put together in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. I could be wrong, and I know that's debatable. But my point is, the good old days is now, and we need to live in the present. We can't stay stuck in the past, and we don't know what the future holds. So we need to be in the present and not take the present and what's going on for granted. Because some of the things that we're doing today will lessen. Just as the example I gave with us going over my closest friends, family, and relatives' parties. They lessen. They don't have the same feel that they had some years ago. And at that time when we were doing them, we probably didn't appreciate just how good they were. Because even as I'm doing this podcast right now, I can see in my mind when my children were small, when all the children were getting together at someone's house, and they would go in the basement or the backyard or in another room, and the adults would be somewhere talking and laughing about whatever was going on, and food would be all over the place, and the older generation was there, our generation was there, and the younger generation was there. And as I said earlier, some of the older generation has passed on now. Mothers and fathers are gone. Grandparents are gone. Cousins and uncles are gone. Folks have moved away. Folks who lived in my area now live in other states, some in other countries. And then as we all do get together, because social media has been a blessing, when we do come together on Facebook or one of the other social media platforms, or on those rare occasions where we have the opportunity to come together again, oftentimes we reminisce and we talk about those were the good old days. And oddly enough, even during those days, there would always be, or always is, because that's how life is, something to complain about, something that we didn't feel was going as well as it could go, something that we didn't feel was as good as it could be, whether it was our jobs, our relationships, our houses, our children. But in reflection and in comparison to what's going on now, it looked mighty good. And that's all that I'm saying is 5-10 years from now, whatever is going on in your life right now is going to seem to you to look mighty good. So again, appreciate whatever you have at the moment, wherever you are at the moment. Because one day you may not have it. Or you may not can do the things that you once did. Our health begins to have challenges. Our finances sometimes begin to have challenges as life changes. Relationships begin to have challenges as life changes. So the good old days are right now. Today is November 9th, 2017. It's a good old day. For those of us who are in education, many of us, depending on what type of school system you work in, are out for the next couple of days for the teachers' convention and to celebrate or acknowledge Veterans Day. Many of us have plans. It's a good old day. We need to be and we must become grateful for the present time that you're in, because one, tomorrow is not promised to us. And the way the world is going now, the next minute is not promised to us. Just over the last week, we've had nearly 30 people killed sitting in a church service in Texas. We've had multiple storms this past year. We're on the brink or the threat of nuclear war with North Korea. And just all types of disasters all around us. So be appreciative for every minute that you have. Be grateful and thankful every time your eyes open each morning after a night's rest, after a night's sleep. Because trust me when I tell you, it is 2017 and I can think now back as if I were watching a movie to 1975. I can think back to 1980. I can think back to 1985. And you see I'm doing 5-year increments, but 1995, 1998. I can see when my children were born, one in 1989 and another in 1995. Or 1994, excuse me. I can see their births as if it were a movie right now, 28 and 23 years later. I can see going over our friend's house, having the cookouts. I can see hosting, having the cookouts and friends coming to my house. I can see going back to school. I can see my days in the military. I can see my days spent with the New Jersey Air National Guard as a jet engine mechanic and my colleagues and peers who I worked on those engines with. I can see those things 20, 25, and 30 years later as if I were watching it on the big screen. And yes, I go back to those and say those were the good old days. But when I was doing whatever I was doing, the fact that that would be a good old day did not even cross my mind. I can see when I bought my first house. I can see when I bought my first car. Those were the good old days. So be grateful and thankful. Don't always be complaining, because when you reflect, I am sure, as the songwriter says, you have more good days than you have bad days. No matter how or what situation you're in, if you were to count everything up, I am sure, even if it's no more than one more good day than it were bad days, I am sure you have more good experiences than you have bad. And even if the reverse is true, look at it from the standpoint of, well, okay, the bad experiences were trying to teach me something. Oh yes, right now, the fact that you're living and breathing, there's hope. The fact that you're alive means it's a good old day. And one day we're going to reflect back on where you are right now, and you're going to be saying those were the good old days. Have a great day. Have a great good new day. Have a great good old day. However you want to look at it. And again, I am so grateful and thank you for you listening. You can catch me here on the Marc Medley Show. You can also catch me live on Saturday mornings on my radio show, The Reading Circle with Marc Medley. That goes live Saturday mornings in drive time, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. And to catch me there, you can log on anywhere in the world to Go Brave. That's GOBRAVE.org. In the northern New Jersey areas on FM radio WP 88.7 FM. And of course, the Marc Medley Show is heard on all podcast platforms. Regardless of which platform, you can follow and you subscribe. I thank you so much for that. Have a wonderful day until we get together again.